What's up, fight fans? Ryan Thomas back for another episode of the Thomas Take Sports Podcast. Each and every major UFC or mixed martial arts event, I love to hop on right here and give you, the fight fans, my fight pick, my preview and prediction, as I like to call it, for all the big fights. There is a big fight taking place tomorrow night, Saturday night, UFC 272, the main event of the evening. Colby Chaos Covington versus Jorge Gamebred Masvidal. This is one of the biggest bad blood bouts in mixed martial arts, arguably in MMA history. And I've been waiting for this one for quite some time. So for us to finally get this fight, for us to finally witness this bad blood clash between two former friends turned bitter rivals, you can't write a better script in the fight game than two former friends turned bitter rivals. But this one is different from the likes of John Jones and Rashad Evans. This one is different from the likes of Chuck Liddell versus Tito Ortiz. These are two guys that live together. These are two guys that train together. And these are two guys that flat out want to kill each other inside the octagon. This is not a work. This is not a fake beef. This is as real as it gets. Inside the UFC octagon, we will see a high-paced fight between Colby Covington and Jorge Masvidal. I'm excited to break down the fight. I'm excited to give you my fight pick for Colby Covington versus Jorge Masvidal. Let's get to it. The preview and prediction for UFC 272, a main event that I think doesn't need a title. Hence, the main event, it's rare that a main event doesn't have a title on the line and it has a 5-round fight round attachment to it. This fight will be 5 rounds. And the fact that this fight is 5 rounds dictates the pace of this fight. 15 minutes is a lot less than 25 when you're standing across from another opponent and when you're trying to go to battle inside that octagon. The strategy for both men is very simple. For Colby Covington, get Jorge Masvidal down to the mat. For Jorge Masvidal, he has to land a big shot on Colby Covington in order to win this fight. Plenty of big shots in order for Masvidal to win this fight. Covington and Masvidal, two completely different style of fighters, and I'm very excited to see how this one pans out. Previewing it and predicting it, you look at the common opponent between Colby Covington and Jorge Masvidal, and it's obviously Kamaru Usman, the current reigning, defending, undisputed UFC welterweight champ. Usman owns not one, but 2 wins over both Covington and Masvidal. But those 2 performances by both Masvidal and Covington tell a very different tale. Covington's bouts with Kamaru Usman were extremely close fights. The first one, although a TKO finish for Kamaru Usman, that fight was very close leading up to that. The second fight, a 5-round decision in which Kamaru Usman got the nod, but Colby Covington obviously won 2 rounds out of those 5 rounds, with Usman winning 3 out of the 5 rounds. And you look at Masvidal's performances against Kamaru Usman. The first fight Masvidal took on 6 days' notice after Gilbert Burns tested positive for COVID. You guys remember it, Fight Island. It was in July of 2020, I believe. And Masvidal was flat, fell flat, couldn't really land the big shot, needed that camp in order to put himself in the right pedestal in order to win this fight, win that fight. Whereas in the rematch, where Colby Covington had success in the striking, believe it or not, Jorge Masvidal didn't. And I don't know what to call that, whether Usman actually improved that much as a striker from the first Masvidal fight to the second Masvidal fight, or if Jorge Masvidal has actually declined as a striker over the course of the last few years, dating back to 2019, when Jorge Masvidal went on this torrid run, knocking out Ben Askren, knocking out Darren Till, and essentially almost knocking out Nate Diaz. That fight was stopped due to a doctor stoppage, due to a cut on the eye of Nate Diaz, opened up by Jorge Masvidal himself. So Masvidal, what has concerned me about Masvidal is that it looks like he is starting to reach his decline. His decline, his aging could just be beginning. Whereas with Colby Covington, he has rattled off some very impressive performances. Went toe-to-toe with Robbie Lawler, but dominated Robbie Lawler, landing a record for strikes in a fight, significant strikes in a fight on Robbie Lawler, smothering Robbie Lawler. His performance against Tyron Woodley, obviously 5 rounds, pillar to post. That was a TKO performance as well. Woodley hurt his rib during the match, and is against the number 1 pound-for-pound fighter on the face of the planet in Kamaru Usman right now, being that number 1 pound-for-pound man. Dana White said it best: if Colby Covington if Kamaru Usman didn't exist, Kamaru Usman wasn't a fighter within the UFC welterweight division, Colby Covington himself would be the champion right now. And you say what you want about his antics, you say what you want about all the stuff that he does prior to building up a fight. In order to build up a fight, Colby Covington is a talented fighter. Colby Covington is a tough fighter. And Colby Covington is a matchup nightmare for virtually anybody that steps into the octagon with him, regardless as to whether they're a wrestler or a striker. In this case, Jorge Masvidal, far more well known for being a striker than a wrestler. But there are some matchups where a fighter can just be motivated enough to get over those matchup hurdles, to rise above the odds being stacked against them. And Jorge Masvidal has a ton of odds stacked against him in this fight, being that the matchup, as I said, Colby Covington can take Masvidal down, but Masvidal could knock out Colby Covington just as easily. I go to the striking numbers of Colby Covington's last 2 performances, namely against Kamaru Usman. He landed 38% of his shots in the second Kamaru Usman fight. 38% against Kamaru Usman. And Usman, yes, he has improved as a striker, but he's not quite known as a legitimate striker as Masvidal is. Although Usman knocked out Masvidal, I think Masvidal somewhat underestimated the striking game of Usman leading up to that fight and during that fight. If they were to fight again, I think Masvidal would come in with a much more prepared strategy to prohibit himself from leaving himself open like he did against Usman, really going in there with his hands down, with very little respect for Usman's rise as a striker, with his improvements, I should say, as a striker. Masvidal essentially just looked past those and said, no, he's not up to snuff against me. I'm just going to go in there. I think Masvidal is looking at Covington in the same way, and rightfully so, because I think Covington is a worse striker than that of Usman. Obviously, Usman was able to outstrike Covington in the first fight and outstrike him in the second fight too, ultimately en route to knocking down Colby Covington. And that's where I have a tough time with Covington. If Covington is going into this one looking to get the takedown too much, shooting in for a takedown leaves you open to be struck in certain instances. If you're unable to get that takedown, which Masvidal had a very easy time stopping Usman in the first fight from landing the takedown early in the fight, this is what makes this matchup so interesting. Masvidal's game plan: avoid the takedown. Can he do it? If he keeps his back to the cage and uses that cage to prevent Covington from taking him down, I think that would be a great strategy for Masvidal in this fight. If you're Colby Covington, do you strike a little bit more than you let on leading into this fight? He's saying he's going to go in there and drown him and maul him and all this stuff. Does Covington just say that and then go into the octagon, let his hands go, and go from there? We'll see. But me looking at this fight, if I'm looking at the betting line of this fight right now, the betting line has Colby Covington at -330 and Jorge Masvidal at +260. I think there's a ton of value with Jorge Masvidal at +260, due in large part to the fact that Jorge Masvidal starts every round on the feet, and Covington will have to take it to the ground in order for it to get there. That's a huge advantage for Masvidal. If you're asking me who I think can win this fight on the X's and O's within MMA, this is Colby Covington's fight to lose. This is Colby Covington's fight to lose. This is easily his fight to win as well, based on his grappling acumen. But it's just as easily his fight to lose. If Masvidal can land solid shots and avoid the takedown early, I think Jorge Masvidal can get this done. But ultimately, I feel like Colby Covington will be able to get Jorge Masvidal down and keep him there. It's a much harder strategy to keep your opponent in there for 25 minutes, but we've seen Jorge Masvidal wear down after a round or two within a fight. So I'm picking Covington to win this one. That's the fight pick. Colby Covington getting it done. I think, if anything, it will come down to a decision due to the style. But the fight pick that I have is Covington. I pick Covington for the simple fact that he does have that grappling acumen, and I think that it is something that he will impose very, very, very often. Attempt to impose it very, very often within this fight. You look at the top right corner, you see the Thomas Take Combat Sports logo. You see it, you believe it. You guys see me calling out the fight picks for UFC fights, for Bellator fights, for combat sports in general, whether it be boxing or MMA. I greatly enjoy covering both sports. We had some awesome guests on the show from Legacy Fighting Alliance. I greatly enjoyed the event at Seneca Niagara Casino last week. Michael Stack got the W. He was on the show. Ashley Nichols got the W. She was on the show. Unfortunately, Solomon Renfro and Loveth Young came up short, but I look forward to seeing what's next for both of those fighters. I know that there is a lot left in the tank for both of them, that they will be coming back with a vengeance. So thank you for tuning in. That's my UFC 272 main event fight pick. I got Colby Covington beating Jorge Masvidal via unanimous decision. But if I'm a betting man, I like that plus 260 with Jorge Masvidal. Betting, maybe with the odds in favor of Covington, your money doesn't really fall in line with Covington. Your money could be maximized with that of Jorge Masvidal. Bet 100 on Jorge, you win $260. You turn that 100 into 360. It's a worthy shot, worthy thought heading into this one. I cannot wait for this fight. This is a fight that I've wanted for quite some time. And in 24 hours, UFC 272 will start. Thank you for tuning in. Enjoy the fight Saturday night. And I look forward to providing you the UFC 272 post-fight reaction show. We got some great fights on this card as well. Rafael Dos Anjos takes on a man that filled this fight on short notice, Renato Moicano. Very much looking forward to that one, as well as Bryce Mitchell taking on Edson Barboza, who has been a mainstay at 155 and 145. Can Bryce Mitchell get it done and get in the win column over a big name like Edson Barboza? Watch out for those leg kicks, Bryce Mitchell. I'm sure his coach has told him that once or twice leading into this fight. Enjoy the fight.